come in. Glad you guys could make it. Thank you for being a little patient. I was running a bit behind today. I grabbed all of my binders except for the right one. So I had to put out a few new things, but we've got some awesome plants that we'll be able to go over today. And one of them I just went outside and picked outside because my binder also has my plant presses. So I was like, ah! But the ones we're going to be going over grow, as is demonstrated by the fact that I have one, in the Ozarks natively, and they're coming up right now. So there's this one. I also have print-offs of some others, so more than just the one I found out front. But before we dive into that, by way of introduction, my name is Dr. Taylor Goodwin. I'm a naturopathic doctor. Sounds kind of like natural path. That's kind of what I try to do. I went to medical school, but I specialized in alternative medicine. And so that means diet, lifestyle, nutrition, a lot of things like that. Also, however, it means things like hydrotherapy and, my personal favorite, herbs. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So, when we are talking about herbs, there's a story that I like to start off with. So, there are actually two stories, and they have a point to them, so bear with me. Back in the 1920s, there was a family, and the Great Depression hit, and the dad lost his job. And he went looking for work everywhere he could, locally, and then he could not find anything. So finally he just had to leave and go further abroad to find whatever he could. His wife and their 4 kids were left at home. And after, I don't know if it was days or weeks, but Dad still hadn't come back, still didn't have a job, and they were down to their last egg and a handful of pinto beans. And that was it for the family of 5 that was still back at home. And no one would eat it because no one wanted to eat the last meal. One of the teenage sons had an interesting hobby. He liked to go to libraries and read books on plants. He also liked to go and find people and say, hey, you're planting something. What do you know about plants? Never mind. Who do you know that knows plants better than you? And then he would go to that person and ask them the same question until he found someone who just was the plant guru of whatever town he could reach. When this period of time came around, when they were down to their last egg and handful of pinto beans, he decided to put what he'd been learning to use. And he went out all day long and he harvested whatever wild edibles he could find. And he came back with a sack that was partway full of prickly pear fruit, edible greens, and edible mushrooms. And he spread them out, and for a month, the family lived almost exclusively on what he harvested. And then his father came back and had a job, and they managed to live that way. That young boy's name was Ewell Gibbons, for those who might know him. He's the eat a pine tree guy. He's back from the 70s, 80s. But interesting guy. I have a second story, and then these two stories will make sense why I'm telling them. There was a park ranger in the 1980s, and he was going about doing his park ranger duties, and he probably knew some of the plants he was walking by, because, you know, you have that job, you're going to learn some of the plants. He sat down, he pulled out his sandwich, and it was a very boring sandwich. Bread, meat, bread, nothing else. So he reached over, he pulled a leaf, and he put it on the sandwich, and he ate it. And unfortunately, that was his last sandwich. He felt confident because he'd been around the plants a lot, but he didn't actually know what they were. These two stories have a number of differences. There's the difference in the age, but then there's also the difference in how much study they put in beforehand. A 14-year-old boy is able to safely harvest and eat and feed his family for a month. A park ranger, an adult who worked in the field, one time was all it took. I tell this story to emphasize 2 points. 1, when small mistakes can have big consequences, we want to know what we're doing. Kind of like driving a car. It's not actually that hard once you know what to do, but if you break the rules, all of a sudden it gets a lot more dangerous. Number 2, it's not that hard to follow the rules. A 14-year-old boy was able to do it. Once you know the rules, it's actually pretty easy to stay safe. You just need to not get cocky, I guess, and always try to check your information at least twice. Meaning, you learn from two different sources. Hello, by way of introduction, my name is Dr. One Source. Okay, so I have harvested and eaten medicinal plants for decades now, and I look so young, but even with that experience, you need to have two sources. I've been on plant walks with people who I still would learn from, who really know their stuff. And they just forgot to mention something really crucial, and then someone in the back raises their hand. How do you tell that apart from poison hemlock? Oh yeah, that's an important question. They look identical except for the smell. And it's like, oh, that's important to know. That was actually something that happened once. OSHA and poison hemlock look very similar, and the smell is the easiest way to tell them apart. So, two sources. The handout that I gave you guys, top left, has all of the safety tips for you. The other ones are if you take medications or have a significant health issue. Plants, well, 70 to 90% of medications came from plants. So it makes sense that plants will sometimes play and integrate and can make some interactions with the medications. So if you're taking medications, talk with your doctor. A lot of plants are safe, but you still want to check. Grapefruit seems like it should be safe, and almost every other medication has a grapefruit warning. So medications, health concerns, and then be sure of your identification. The last safety tip though, and I know this is the exciting part, this is what you guys are all here for, safety information. But the last safety one is the top right box, and that's not for us, that's for the plants. I mentioned OSHA briefly, ligusticum. I mentioned it briefly just a moment ago. That plant was actually very close to going extinct. It's a sacred plant to the Native Americans, especially in the Midwestern area of the country. And it was so over-harvested, not just because it was an important and sacred plant, but probably more so because people found out, who had monetary things in their mind, found out it was extremely good for joint health. How many people do you know who have joint problems? Everyone over the age of 20, it feels like these days. So, congrats, you got it at 14. You're an overachiever. You know, it's like everyone. But since it was so good at that, it got over-harvested to the point it almost went extinct. That actually happens more often than we think, especially if it's a local area. So you can have a plant that's got a bunch over here, but over here in Oklahoma or something like that, whatever, only has this many. And then they get harvested out and it goes extinct in that spot. And it won't come back again. So, when harvesting plants, only take the ones that are really abundant. Take up to half of those if they're like super weedy and everywhere, which are what we're going to talk about today. If they're a little uncommon, but not because they're rare, just because they like to grow in smaller amounts, take up to a third and try to leave the roots alone if you can. If they are truly endangered, and you should check, take nothing but photographs, leave nothing but footprints, give them a chance to come back. So, there's our safety information. There's a bunch of other things. I can actually go on for 2 hours on safety if you really want me to. Twist my arm. No one twisted my arm. All right, we'll call that good for safety. So, any questions on it though? Okay, awesome. Then we'll move to the next part. This is, so I lived in Arizona before this, just as an aside. I don't know if you've been to Arizona, but it's hot and it's a lot drier. And I came over here and it was like, oh, storybook land. They even have birds. You know, we have them back over there, but you have cardinals and bluebirds. And it's like, I didn't know that those were real. Those were the princess books. You know, it's like, I knew that they were real, but it still felt like I was walking into a storybook. And half of all of the plants that I would read about and I would order in for my patients and my clients, they just grow wild here. It was like utopia. So I have found myself using more and more fresh plants, and it's amazing what fresh does compared to dried. Sometimes dried is just as good, don't get me wrong, but there are some plants, it makes all the difference in the world. We're going to talk about one of those today, actually. Both of them, both of the main plants we're going to talk about are better fresh, but the plants we will talk about today, they grow native, well, they grow naturalized at least, in the Ozarks. They are particularly safe once you know how to identify them properly. And they have substantial health qualities. And so that's why I've picked these ones out. They're also just about the only thing that's really getting a little bit of a foothold so far. Next month we're going to have a lot more things to pick from, but I wanted ones that you guys can go out and see. So we got the first one right here. I'm going to try to hide the name, but if you manage to cheat, good job. Anyone want to take a guess at what this plant might be? I'll come around to both sides. Here's for future, you guys. I'm recording. Any guesses? Plantain. Got it. Yes, this is plantain, also known as plantago. Plantago is the kind of like the genus name. There are several different kinds of plantago. We're going to talk about plantago major, as well as its sister, plantago lanceolata. So, plantago major has these big fat oval leaves. And hopefully, I usually have a plant press I can hold up, but like I said, I was intelligent earlier. And it's still back where it's a lot of use at home. So, but there are these big fat leaves that come off, and they're not like these narrow, pointy, pencil-shaped leaves. Pencil shape means lance shape. Lance is like a weapon, right? Lanceolata has the big, narrow leaves. Major has the big leaves that are big and fat. So plantago, I'm going to tell you about plantago with a series of stories. First story, as I said, I came over from Arizona, and I'm down in Kansas, little Kansas, with some of my in-laws, and we're out there on their homestead, and we're doing things, and I have two nephews with me. Technically, it was one nephew one day, one nephew the next day, but who's counting? And we went out to do, I think we were cleaning up after a storm or something like that, and we were picking stuff up, and Uncle Goodwin is so careful with all of his nephews that we managed to be cleaning up, and it's like, oh, what's that weird sound? That sound that I totally don't hear in Arizona ever. And a wasp came down and stung both of us, actually. It managed to get both of us. I didn't get us out of there in time. And so I learned that there's a lot more, dangers in this jungle that you call Oklahoma. But we both went inside. The other nephew had wandered off and was cleaning somewhere else. And he came back around later, and I didn't warn him. So he got stung too. So it was great. But so we were all family bound. It was great. But the nephew who was with me, and we got stung both together while we were running, probably photogenically away, I looked around for a very specific plant as soon as we were out of range. And it was this guy. This was not just the plant that was on hand. This is the plant I wanted. I looked for the big fat leaves because I wanted major. Lanceolata works too, but I just like major. And I looked for, on the back of the leaves, there are, I'm going to bring this around again, notice the veins in these leaves. They are very straight. They're very parallel. Very noticeable. If you run your finger on the underside of the leaf, you will feel bump, 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 like a washboard. Very prominent. They stick out the back of the leaf. You can see them from the front, but you feel them from the back. And then, once I found that leaf, I ran down to where the leaf stalk goes into the dirt. Okay? The leaf stalk, you might notice in this little picture, this big picture over here, all the leaves are coming from where?
The ground.
The ground. Perfect. That's actually completely and absolutely accurate. 5 gold stars. All right. None of them are coming from the stem. That's important. If any of the leaf stalks are coming off of the stem of the seed head, not plantain. So, I followed that leaf stalk back. Sure enough, it went to the ground. And all the leaves come out from one point in the ground, and they kind of spiral out from that point. That leaf structure, where the leaves come out from the ground, all in a spiral, so to speak, that's called a basal, meaning baseline, or ground level, rosette. Stuff coming out in a circle-ish pattern. Basal rosette. So I looked for the basal rosette, check, had a basal rosette. I also looked at the seed head to make sure it looked about right. Nothing coming off of it, and it had a spike of seeds at the top. It looks like a lot of other seed heads, but right here is a zoom up on the seed head where and this seed head is in the middle of flowering. It has some that are seeds, some that are flower, and some that are still like buds that aren't quite into flower. And so this picture shows you all of those. If you see these seed heads plus the basal rosette, and the leaves have those bumps, that's plantago. No lookalikes at that point. As soon as you add the seed head in, you're safe. There are no lookalikes that have similar looking seed heads and those leaves. So, I found plantago, and I looked slyly to the right. I looked coyly to the left, and with no one around to see me, I grabbed the leaf and I threw it in my mouth and chewed it up and spit it out and put it right on top. And I was like, I am a professional. This is what I call the Boy Scout method. It's what you do when your parents aren't watching. So this is actually the way that it's most often used. It's nature's Band-Aid, basically. As soon as you chew it up, you still have all the juice, which has the medicine, and so that goes on top, and that's really good. If you get rid of the juice, it's not nearly as good. That's where the medicine is in plantago, and that's why drying it doesn't help very much. Also, drying destroys all the compounds that are in the juice if you try to be clever and, none of it leaves the jar or whatever. And so, putting it over the top, it didn't bring instant relief, but in about 5 minutes, it was feeling better. In about 15, it was like, okay, good. Now remember, and I gave some to my nephew as well, because I am definitely at least a repentant uncle. I don't know about a good one, but... next day, our wasp stings were maybe the size of a dime or smaller, which is pretty good for a wasp sting. And they didn't, we knew that they were there, but they weren't aching or throbbing or swelling. They weren't big and red and about the size of a silver dollar, and they weren't having the sound of, oh, Mom, what can I do? Oh, yeah, there were 2 nephews, weren't there? How do I know exactly what it would sound like from a nephew? I didn't treat the other nephew. He didn't tell me he got stung. And so what I just described is actually exactly what his looked like. Swollen, red, tender, painful. And so he was asking his mom, if I recall correctly, maybe it was his dad, he was asking, what can I do about this? Well, we have a doctor in the house now, go ask him. Oh, shame, 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 shame. Doctor should have checked on him after the excursion yesterday, knowing what happened in the area that we were all assigned to clean. Intelligence, I have been told, is a strong suit. I don't know that it's mine, but it's someone's. So we took some plantago, we chewed it up, and we looked to the right, we looked to the left, and then we slapped it on. Plantago works a lot better. Yeah, he didn't appreciate the slap. I don't think I did, but it would have been funny. Plantago works a lot better on bug bites and things when the bite is fresh. It still helped in about, I don't remember how long it took for him, but I'm going to guess it was about probably a half hour. It's going to take a little longer. The swelling in particular is what is still helped. The swelling went down, and one of the most painful things about bites and toothaches and joint pain, actually a lot of the time, lots of things, swelling. If your balloon is about to pop, you can be sure that if balloons could talk, they would not be happy with you. Same with anything in your body that's full. So, yeah, that's Plantago's first story. The action is astringent. If any of you are trying to learn herbal medicine, that's the word you want to remember, astringent. It means drying and removing extra fluid, brought down the swelling. It did some other things too, but we'll have other stories for that. So, astringent, to give it another more colorful example, imagine a kitchen sponge full of liquid. Now, if we have an injury that's full of liquid, you can, with the kitchen sponge, you can go ahead and run water over it, and it'll kind of look gray for a long time. Some of the dirty stuff in the sponge comes out, and some of the clean stuff goes in. That's what your body is going to do with swelling. It's like, it's going to take care of it. But it's a lot easier if you just wring the sponge out of all the nasty and then put all the good in, rather than good and nasty mixing. And that's what astringent makes the swelling do. Just wrings it all out, and then you can have all the good stuff comes in. Also accelerates healing for that reason. Because you've gotten rid of the things that are still like broken glass on the floor, let's say, that cause more inflammation, let's say. So, astringent can help healing accelerate, not just reduce swelling. Story number 2. There is an herbalist who I respect quite a bit, who is also a veterinarian. Bless him. He lives in Idaho. His name is Dr. Patrick Jones. He's got a website. You can read lots of cool stuff there. No affiliation or whatever. I just think he's a good source. He could be one of your other Dr. One sources, for example. Dr. Patrick Jones. He went on a backpacking trip with one other family of friends. His family and them. They went off on a backpacking trip, and they went a good ways into the middle of nowhere. And when I say middle of nowhere, I mean like Middle West, middle of nowhere, not here, middle of nowhere, where you could still throw a rock and probably hit someone that you can't see behind the trees. They were at least a day, maybe up to like 3 days. I always say 3 days. I don't remember how far he went out, but they were no longer able to get back quickly. And they started setting up camp, and the kids started playing, and the dogs were playing, and they were all having fun together. And I imagine that he probably had just sat down because that's Murphy's Law. And then he heard, and all the kids started yelling. And so he got up, and the other adults got up, and they went over there, and he got there just in time to see a rattlesnake tail disappear in the tall grass. The dog had been bit on its foreleg. So they're out in the middle of nowhere. What should you do? Please, regardless of anything we talk about today, please go to the hospital if you get bit by a venomous snake, okay? Magic plants are great, especially when they're not the kind of magic plants that you get down the road that have dispensary written on it. That's not what we're talking about. But plants can vary in their potency, and different snakes have different kinds of venom. Just keep that in mind. But he didn't have the option of an anti-venom. They were too far out. He probably didn't even have cell service if he had a cell phone with him, because I think this was in like the 90s where cell phones were kind of optional. So he opened his first aid kit, and he pulled out echinacea root, but then he looked around for plantago, specifically. And he found it, and he told other people to harvest it, showed them how to do it, and then they brought it back, and he made a poultice, mushed up plant with a little bit of wet oil probably to help it penetrate, and then he wrapped it around the dog's paw, and then he did the magic part that I can't do, and he somehow got the dog to eat some of this too. I don't know, maybe they had bacon grease left over in the pan. That's the only thing I can think of. But magic veterinarian sauce, he managed to get the dog to eat some. This dog should have been dead. Usually snake venom, many snake venoms have 3 components. They have others as well, but they have 3 major components that make a really big mess of whatever they bite. So the skin has lots of things in it, but one of the things is hyaluronic acid. It's a good thing. This is like the mortar between bricks. It's the stuff between cells that holds them there and nourishes them and all that kind of stuff. Snakes have something that destroys hyaluronic acid. It's called hyaluronidase. It's an ACE. ACE means chewer-upper or cutter-upper. So hyaluronidase chews up and gets rid of hyaluronic acid, right? Not good. Your mortar is gone. What's going to happen? The skin is not going to be nearly as resistant. The snake has a second compound. We've already got damage going. What's the second compound? Well, in the skin, we have some very important stuff that makes us all look beautiful. Collagen. You've probably heard of that on every single cosmetic commercial that is known to man, right? By the way, PSA, public service announcement, if you're rubbing collagen on your skin, it's not doing anything. Collagen is too big of a molecule to penetrate the skin. There we go, PSA over. If you eat it, that's different. But FYI, there might be other useful things in that cosmetic, but it ain't the collagen. But collagen is like scaffolding. It's what puts everything together so that things grow off of it. Let's put it that way. Things grow off of the collagen strands. So if you chew up the collagen strands, you've gotten rid of the support structure and the repair and renew method. What do you think the collagen breaker upper is called? Collagen ACE. It's an enzyme, it chops it up, so the snakes have collagenase. Third thing that's in snake venoms commonly, as well as other animals, elastin is something that makes us stretchy, so elastase is something that takes that away. This is what gives us some of the resilience so that the skin doesn't just tear when you pull it. It's got some of that rubberiness. Why do I tell you all about this? This is a class on snake venoms. Didn't you guys know? The plants are over there. Now, all right, so if all the three of those things are disrupted, not to be gruesome, but the skin just kind of falls off. It sloughs off. That's bad, by the way, in case you weren't sure on that. If the venom goes up through the bloodstream, there's bad all over, but at least it's decently hidden because it's on the inside. So this dog should not have been alive, but the next morning, it was still alive. The reason is both echinacea root, I'm not sure if it has every single one of these, but plantago does, and echinacea root's got a couple other things. But plantago leaf, by the way, has anti-hyaluronidase, meaning it breaks the breaker. It breaks down the snake venom chewer upper enzyme. It breaks down hyaluronidase. So anti-hyaluronidase, who remembers the second one? Collagenase, all right. And then the third one, it has anti-elastase. And so it actually blocks all three of those in one plant. One plant breaks down all three of those attacking enzymes. So this dog the next morning was alive, and it should not have been. And I don't know that it was happy, but it actually went on to live a normal life. And you can read about this on Dr. Patrick Jones' website. He catalogs a whole lot of things. I don't remember if this is one that he had multiple posts following the whole thing. He also has some other cool stories. There was one dog that got, unfortunately, drugged behind a truck by accident, and it got sanded down until its bone was exposed. Plantago was part of helping that heal. So the action here for plantago is anti-venom, with a little asterisk saying, please still go to the hospital. Anti-venom. I have a very short additional story on anti-venom. I had a friend who she started a new job, and what happens as soon as you start a new job? Nothing good. Whatever your life can throw at you. She got bit by a spider right there. And it was a venomous spider, not dangerous, like lethal. She went and got it checked out by someone else because I'm careful on how much friend and family I do when it's stuff like that, because you can have your judgment a little bit cross-eyed. I don't know if it's dangerous, just go check, But she went, got checked out. It wasn't a kill you spider. It was just a, oh crap, this is not fun spider. And so she came back 4 days. 4 days later, she still, for the whole 4 days, had a massive headache, not going away, radiating up. She finally said, can we just stop being friends for 10 minutes, please? All right, fine, we're not friends anymore. What do you need? This is hurting. What can I do for it? Since we weren't friends, I was able to help. And I gave her a salve, kind of chapstick sort of stuff, but it's got plants in it. I gave her a salve that had plantago in it. It also had chickweed and some other things, but it had plantago, and that's what I'm counting on. And she rubbed it on there. I did not expect this. I know plants work. I didn't expect this. 2 hours. 2 hours later, 100% gone. Best guess, it was still red and irritated. My best guess was that there was still some active elastase, hyaluronidase, and collagenase going on and continuing the damage. Because for it to make it that quickly, it's either the swelling, which there was some swelling, but it still looked angry and red. It looked like stuff was still going on. I think that the anti-venom did it. Wasps also have some things like that, and it might help there too. I haven't investigated wasp venom, so don't hold me on that. Very cool. So, my last story for plantago. This one's actually about me. Forgive me, that's the life I've lived. So, in medical school, you would be shocked to know, or maybe you wouldn't, how many of us get some kind of illness because we're under so much stress. Stress begets illness, whether it's contagious or not. And I managed to pick out the wonderful one that I actually got to the point where I almost had to start using a cane. Because walking, I could only do it for about 5 minutes because of how painful it was in my feet and the small joints of my finger. I had arthritis, joint inflammation. I didn't know what kind. All I knew is that my small joints in my feet hurt a lot to walk on. Small joints in my hand hurt a lot to bend. And it was getting worse, not better. Now, one of the things that I did some things there that helped take care of it and get it sort of steady. But when I came over here, I found an additional thing that really helped as well. With what I have, reactive arthritis is the actual term. It's not rheumatoid, but it kind of feels similar. It hits guys in their 20s and 30s, and then sometimes it disappears and sometimes it doesn't. Mine still comes back if I don't take care of it, so lucky number. But my tendons and ligaments are the part of my joints that get inflamed in the joint capsule. What happens when something gets inflamed? If anyone wants to take a guess, this is kind of a hard question. It gets swollen. Inflammation brings fluid to an area. And so I take 2 plantago leaves in the morning when they're fresh. And even if I've been bad about doing some of the other things I'm supposed to do to keep this all happy, I can do this, so I've been pretty good lately. Plantago will make so that my joints are no longer loose. So if you've ever had joints that feel like they dislocate really easily, some people have that, Plantago can help because astringency tightens the joints back up together. So that's my last story, is that with astringency, but also with a connective tissue tonic action that Plantago has, it actually not only wrings out the bad stuff, it adds good stuff to help rebuild connective tissue. It's gentle, but frankly, connective tissue tonics are always gentle, so that's not really a mark against it. And so it re-nourishes and helps me rebuild. So, Plantago's got some awesome things about it. This extra story is to help you identify. Those are the stories for herbal actions. They were all about the leaf. Before I tell you how to identify it, we went over the identification, but the name has a thing that helps you remember. Before we do that, though, there's one more medicinal action. The seeds, in this case. The seeds. All the rest of it was the leaf. The seeds have a medicinal action, and it's everyone's favorite party drug. Close the ears of the children. Laxative. All right, so it's all that party food, right? It sits really heavy. Everyone was thinking it. So the seeds are actually the same as what's the stuff? I don't buy it ever, so
Senna?
No, it's not as powerful as Senna.
Okay.
Senna will eject it out the bottom. So you're right that does help with the. It's a cathartic laxative. Senna is. So if the word cathartic is in front of it, be cautious. It's a weapon. Okay. But this is a bulk forming laxative. I believe it's either. It might be osmotic as well. There are 3 main types of laxative: osmotic, bulk forming, and cathartic. So cathartic sounds like it'll be the best, and it depends on if you're the one taking it or the one who's laughing behind the door. But the seeds, what's the stuff everyone takes for laxative? I never buy it. Miralax. I'm pretty sure that is basically psyllium husk. I'm trying to remember, is there Mucinex or something like that? Not Mucinex up here. I've never forgotten this before. I never take it, so I finally need to go down to Walgreens again.
Miralax is your polyethylene glycol that you mix with water. It is non-bulk forming. What you're talking about is like Metamucil.
Metamucil, that's what it is. I was like, it starts with an M, so that's close. Thank you. Metamucil's active ingredient is psyllium husk. And the seeds are virtually identical of Plantago to psyllium husk. They work the same. The only caution is this. Please drink enough water. Otherwise, they are just going to stop you up. They're osmotic. So Plantago's got a lot of stuff going for it. It's also just nutritive, so it's just healthy. Back in Europe, they would actually take Plantago and just throw it into the pot. That's why it's called a pot herb. It's food. Safe for children, safe for pregnant, safe for everyone. Very nice, friendly plant. What's the one part that must be there for our identification to be sure? The seed head. If the seed head isn't there, just wait until the seed head's there. By the way, the seed head is also the easiest thing to see from a distance. So if you're looking for it, don't look for the green leaves. Look for the seed heads and then check. It'll save you a lot of time. This grows on every continent besides Antarctica, so this is one that you can take with you around the globe. And frankly, I've made the joke that's almost not a joke, that I can find this at a closer distance than the distance that I could throw a nephew. So it's going to be in pretty decent close range. I mean, I can hike them pretty far, but this is going to be within 10 feet of you most of the time if it's growing, if you've got grass. So, kind of like dandelion, but people are less angry at it. So, the name, plantago, we already talked about major and lanceolata, how those kind of tie in. Major is a big leaf, lanceolata is a pencil leaf. But plantago, who's ever heard of plantar fasciitis? Who's ever heard of plantar warts? Plantar means bottom of the foot. Well, when the Europeans, who used this as a pot herb, came over to the Americas, this is not native. And so the Native Americans, in very roughly their own words, give or take, saw that wherever the Europeans or wherever the white man went, his faithful plant popped up behind him and followed. They called this, in Native Americans' tongue, white man's footprint. White man's footprint. One plant can make 20,000 seeds, and they have just a bit of static electricity. Is all it takes to get them to stick to things. And so plantago, it can help you remember white man's footprint, and you can go ahead and see that they have the leaves that are nice and big and close to the ground, and maybe that'll help you remember. So, any questions about plantain?
I have one question. So with the wasp, you said you chewed it up, put it in your hand and put it on for your arthritis.
Yes, like a disgusting
Is it
heathen.
ingestion or is it also external application?
Excellent question. The question was, in case it wasn't heard, especially since I talked over you, forgive me. I think I'm so funny. But do you use it external or internal? For the leaf, for all of its uses, it's best to do both. Internal is what I do for the arthritis and things. Bites and anything that's got broken skin, I would do external preferentially, but doing both is helpful. It is true that for arthritis, it doesn't penetrate the skin super great, so you need some kind of vehicle or driver to get it to go in deeper. That's probably too in-depth of a topic. So internal is best for the arthritis if you're going simple. So, awesome question. Any others?
With your reactive arthritis, did you do blood work? Did your labs come back skewed?
I was in medical school. I talked to doctors where I was like, and all that stuff. So that one was a medical school surrounded by medical professionals, and it's like,
Phone a friend.
while I'm in rheumatology class, yeah. But, so I haven't done the blood work, but good question. I can say that if you doubt my diagnostic skills and those of others, that's fine. But my joint pain goes away when I do this, so we can say that.
No, I was thinking of, are you seronegative? If they were to do lab work, would you be seronegative with the reactive arthritis during a flare-up, or would you be?
I doubt it. I would still be seropositive. Most likely it won't remove the root cause. This is helping with one of the core symptoms of the disease. To remove the root cause, we do immunomodulators, and those are other plants. That one, you might be able to get it. I've seen like Hashimoto's. I know we just got technical, sorry. We have mutual nerddom going on. Hashimoto's, which you might be familiar with if you're using words like seronegative. I've seen titers of that reduce with immunomodulators. So this is going to be something going towards one of the key symptoms, but not going to change the blood work. So great question. Oh, that was such a refreshing nerddom. Okay, so please keep coming back. Next. All right. Were you guys here last year? I feel like
We were.
Yes, I remember you. It was about this time last year too. And then I was like, where did the nursing students go?
We're here.
All right. Happiness is back. So, second plant. Anyone want to take a guess at what this is called?
A flower.
Yeah. All right. We got it.
Purple nettle.
Purple nettle, very
Stinging
close.
nettle?
Very close. There's a sister plant called purple dead nettle. That's not this one. Very similar flower. We'll talk about that one too, actually.
I was thinking that.
This is not one that I was familiar with when I moved to Colorado. So this one grows here. It also grows in Colorado. I'm going to tell you a story, and that's my punishment for you not knowing the name, because now you have to hear the whole story to know the name. All right. I moved to Colorado with my wife Avril, as opposed to without her. I don't know. And we were there for the first week, and I was taking a walk around because we had moved from a place where it was called Pueblo West, also in Colorado, but nothing grows there. It's the driest place that's habited in the country. It's like, how did we get here? Anyway, so we were very glad to go somewhere where there was actual plant life, and I was taking a walk, and I saw this plant. I'm just going to bring around the actual plant because it's actually out there. You want to take this one, pass it around? I saw this plant, and this one, little tiny, tiny purple blooms are just starting on this sprig. The other sprig's got a little bit more, but it's early for the blossoms anyway. And I could see the bright purple flowers in Colorado from across the street. And so I went across the street and I went down to the sidewalk crack and I pulled up some of that plant because I could see that it was growing everywhere. And then I took it home, and since it was so beautiful with the flowers, you can see that they get bigger later in the year, right? Bigger and prettier. And like a gentleman and excellent husband, I gave it to my wife. And I said, welcome to our new home. And she was like, oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. What's it called? And then the botanical expert that I am, knowing and doing decades of plant walks and all these other things, I said, let me take out the garbage and I'll get back to you. And so I went over and I took out the garbage, and then I conveniently forgot to get back to her until the next day. I did some quick research, and then I went over and I said, oh, remember yesterday? You had a question. I forgot to tell you. There's that plant that right there that's in the water. Yes, you wanted to know its name. Your all-knowing husband is very happy to satisfy your curiosity. It's called, and then here's a pro tip for everybody, very important. If you are trying to be romantic, never use Latin unless they are also in medical school, okay? And so I caught myself and I didn't say Lamium amplexicale, Latin name. Lamium amplexicale, that wouldn't have gone over well. I said henbit. And she said, why do all the prettiest flowers have the ugliest names? I've renamed this plant. I now call it Tyrian Star. So that might remind you, I don't know if anyone's quite nerdy enough for this, but I have to say it. Tyrian purple was a royal purple back in the ancient Greek days that was so well known that it was worth much more than its weight in gold. It made a purple that changed color as it moved. It is even today considered an extraordinarily rare and very valuable color. And people had to work very hard to even recreate it because the recipe was lost. I could talk way too much about Tyrian purple. I'll stop there. But very pretty purple flowers. Tyrian Star reminds you it's got purple flowers. Lamium means plate. If you look at the leaves, look at that leaf. It looks like a circle with a stem poking through it, right? I'm going to come up closer for you. Looks kind of like a circle, and then the stem just punches right through it. Looks like a plate. Lamium, plate. All right. There's... Oh, yeah, of course. I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, see how it's a circle? And then it's got that stem poking up right in the middle. If I ever forget, you say something. All right. It's because I'm too tall. Can't see them. All right. So lamium means plate. That'll help you remember that the leaves, they're sucked in close to the stem. That is important. That's how you tell it apart from its sister, purple dead nettle. Which, does dead nettle sound friendly? It's lying to you though, it actually is friendly. It doesn't sound friendly, but purple dead nettle is actually edible. And that's the closest look-alike, has similar flowers, but we'll get there. So the plates are sucked in close to the stem, the leaves, and they look like a plate with a stem through the center. There's one other thing in ancient Greek mythology. How many of you have heard of the Medusa? Yeah? The Gorgon. How many of you have heard of the Harpy, the big bird woman that's evil? Okay, this third one is going to see, if you know this one, I'm sorry, you are too far gone in Greek mythology. You are incurable nerd, and that's a good thing, but it's too late. The Lamia. Very few people have ever heard of this one. This is a half snake, half woman, man-eating monster in the Greek mythology. And so some people think that lamium doesn't refer to plate. It actually refers to lamia, because look at those mean-looking flowers. They look like mouths coming to eat you. I think they're insane. But if any of you have a significant other or a friend who is male, don't let them go wandering in henbit, or they might get eaten. So those flowers, I tell you this so you can remember that the flowers look like little mouths. Nom nom nom. I think that this looks adorable, but you never know. Some fierce things, rabbits can give you quite a bite. Don't ask how I know that. So, amplexicale just means no leaf stalk. So we basically already covered that. So Lamium amplexicale. Cool story about this. That's how I go over plants. I try to, is stories. In, what was it? 400 BC. I always forget the year, so allow me to consult my brain. I wrote these. Yeah, good job. Oh, that's Hippocrates. Well, Hippocrates was in 400 BC. Anyway, a long time ago in Imperial Japan, there was a book written by a handmaid that lived in the Royal Imperial Palace. And it was called the Pillow Book, or Pillow Trove. And in that book, she wrote a great many things of interest to historians and people who like history. But she also wrote a recipe. And it was called the 7 Herbs of Spring. And it was something that they had every January 7th by our calendar. They had a different calendar, every New Year's, basically. And they would eat this every year to bring health and vitality and good fortune. Today, this recipe is still actually used as a Japanese New Year porridge. The 7 Herbs of Spring include 6 other herbs, including like radish greens and things like that. But they also usually include, it changes region to region based on what's available, usually include henbit, or Tyrian Star, as we're all going to call it now, right? So, Tyrian Star is packed with nutrition. It is nutritive. That's an action. Nutritive. It's got a number of other actions too. Actually, it does a great many things. You guys ready? It helps connective tissue. Okay, you're going to take notes, so I'm going to tell you the other thing first. That way you don't have messy notes, because that would be very mean of me. I don't prescribe this for almost anything, ever. The reason is it's good for connective tissue, but only gently. Okay? That's the word that you want to add to all of these, gently. It's antioxidant, mildly. It's good for digestion, that's probably the thing it's best at, moderately. It's good for inflammation, mildly. It's good for parasites and worms, it's good for bruises, it's good for connective tissue, if I didn't already say that one, wound healing, it's good for a whole slew of things, but it's just gentle about all of it. And so this is a health food. This isn't a, I have a specific condition and I need to take care of it. This is a, let's just be healthy in general. Health and vitality and good fortune for the new year. That's what they ate it for. And that's what it's good for. This is something to add to your salads. This is just a health food you don't have to go to Whole Foods, to go and purchase. So, if you do have digestive issues, this one's actually quite helpful for that. The rest of them, it's very mild. If you grab the stem and twirl it, These are really small, but you might be able to feel. I'll hand it and we can pass it around if you want to, but you can just take my word for it if you like. Go ahead and twirl that stem. Feels a little bumpy as you spin it. It doesn't feel smooth. This stem is a square. It's a square stem. Here, go ahead and feel. Square stem. Yeah, go ahead. Square stem. And then the leaves are coming off at the same level, opposite leaves. And then it's got bright purple flowers and no leaf stalks. So, it's all good. You can take that one home. So, square stem, opposite leaves, bright purple flowers. This is a mint plant. It's in the mint family. It does not smell like mint, however, FYI. Now, if you eat it, there's the tiniest, teeniest little bit of mint to it, but it's mostly just mild. It doesn't taste like spinach, which is what everybody expects every green to taste like, spinach or kale. It doesn't taste like chlorophyll, which is what plantago, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that part. As you're doing your Band-Aid, you're getting some bitter. Plantago is, the smaller leaves are less bitter, but this henbit is very mild in flavor as well as all of its actions. Very friendly to add for a burst of color to make a salad more attractive. So, last thing to say about henbit or Tyrian Star is the sister plant. We want to talk about lookalikes. I told you with plantago for lookalikes you need the seed head and then everything else. For henbit, you look at the leaves, and there should be no leaf stalk. If the leaf stalk and the leaves are out over here, or if the leaves are triangles and out over there, if they're triangles and out over there, that's the sister plant, purple dead nettle. Edible, safe. There are no poisonous lookalikes. Now, please still be careful with purple plants and purple flowers, because as soon as anyone ever says there are no poisonous lookalikes, someone will be creative and say, well, I mean, there was green on it, so they looked the same. It's like, please at least look at the structures, and then we're good. So, yeah, those two plants, purple dead nettle has purple dead nettle. One more time, in case you didn't write this down, this is our third plant really fast. It has leaf stalks and triangle leaves, and everything else is the same. Square stem, opposite leaves that come off at the same level, and then purple flowers. And if you see those, they're going to be growing in meadows. They're about yay tall, and they're going to be mixed with each other. Usually there'll be a bunch of one and a bunch of other, and then they'll come up like there's a battle line, and they're like, this is my territory, now it's my territory, and they'll have everything behind them, and it'll, you can sit there with popcorn and watch the battle unfold. It's very slow, like watching grass grow. But, it's exciting. So, those are our 3 plants for today. We got plantago, we got henbit, we got purple dead nettle. Any questions on those guys?
Can you repeat the structure of that last one?
Purple dead nettle structures. It will have, the differences are it has a leaf stalk and triangle leaves. Everything else matches henbit, basically. Square stem, leaves that come off at the same height, called opposite leaves, and then purple flowers, which both of them share. Any other questions? All right. Well, in that case, I have just a few things to let you know about that you might be interested in, and then I'll set you free, my hostages. So, number 1, I, despite appearances, am a doctor somehow. I have helped lots of patients despite my sense of humor. I have a clinic down in Jay. If you're interested in a 15-minute free conversation to see if we're a good fit, because I help rebuild health of the body, which helps you fight off most diseases, because if your body is healthy, then the rest of it becomes easier. I've got a sign-up sheet for free 15-minute consults over there. If you signed up thinking it was a sign-in sheet, you can go cross off your name. It's just if you want the free 15-minute consult. Second, I am offering an herbalism class that runs 1 day a month for 8 months. It's starting this month. This is going to cover the foundations of herbalism, how to formulate, how to be safe. You actually will get an hour and a half on safety, but the rest of it's also very good. how to make medicine. I also just added 3 in-depth botany, how to identify and harvest plants to it as well. So you get 8 classes plus 3 plant walks. If you're interested, you need to sign up by March 10th, but there's a payment over time system. My business card has my email, and you can just email me on there, or you can go to the website and sign up there, or you can just stay after and talk to me, but I know I'm scary. So, herbalism class, you'll never wonder if a blog knows more than you again. So that's kind of my point there. Besides that, there is a meet and eat. This is just out in the fields. Learn about plants, learn how to harvest and prepare them. Go home with some projects for making recipes at home. And play around with our solar oven that runs fully off of sun. So that is something that's also starting this month. And I won't hold all of you. If you want more details, talk to me after class. Also, you can just write your name and put interest next to it on whatever class you're interested in. Besides that, there's a bunch of other cool stuff. Last thing I'll say is this that we all just did today currently is a monthly event. So if you come back next month, usually Grove is the 3rd Wednesday of every month, and new plants every month. Thank you guys for coming and joining me today.